Hello, everyone. My name is Sab Casado. I'm a junior at Commonwealth University, majoring in political science and criminal justice. I decided to write about women's rights in New Zealand. I figured it would be interesting to learn a little bit more about rights that women have in other countries surrounding us. And I also thought it would be interesting to learn about the laws that are in place to support these rights. I thought it would be interesting to learn a little bit more about the historical background behind women's suffrage and women's rights in New Zealand. Before reform, women in New Zealand had little to no rights. Women could not vote, they could not run for legal office, and they had very little legal power. Women were expected to follow strict domestic roles. These roles included raising children, cooking, and managing the house. Education was very limited for women in New Zealand. Working was oftentimes discouraged because women were expected to remain at home. Decisions were mainly made by men in all aspects, which included financial and political decisions. Women were usually ignored. Women were expected to follow strict Victorian gender roles. This meant that women were seen as dependent and incapable of making decisions that influenced politics or public decision. Women became very frustrated with these conditions. This led to the women's suffrage movement. The women's suffrage movement. Activists organized one of the largest petition campaigns in the world at the time. The petition was formed in 1893 and got over 31,000 signatures, which was a very large amount because of the small amount of people present in New Zealand at the time. The movement was peaceful, and activists did things like write articles, host community meetings, give speeches, and send petitions to Parliament. The women's suffrage movement did face a lot of backlash from politicians. Politicians claimed that if women were able to participate in politics, families would be torn apart and society would be ruined. Even though there was a big amount of resistance present against the movement did gain a lot of momentum and public support from everyone, including men. Some leaders in the women's suffrage movement. Mary Muller is the earliest known New Zealand feminist writer. She wrote under a pseudonym, which was Femina, because it was unacceptable for women to speak about politics openly to the public at the time. Muller said women should have the right to vote, they should have educational equality, property rights, and a voice in society. She is said to have laid the intellectual foundation of women's rights in New Zealand. Kate Sheppard is the most famous leader in the New Zealand women's suffrage movement. She led the 1893 campaign that got over 31,000 signatures. It was the largest petition in New Zealand at the time. Sheppard continued later on to push for things like access to education, equality in marriage, and women's right to run for office. She made such an impact in New Zealand that her face is on the $10 bill. New Zealand women in politics. Women won the right to vote in New Zealand in 1893. Women were later allowed to run for parliament in 1919. The first woman elected was in 1933. Her name was Elizabeth McCombs. Over time, women started to have more of a role in parliament. Jenny Shipley was the first female prime minister in New Zealand. Helen Clark was known for progressive leadership and was also a long-serving prime minister. Jacinda Ardern was globally recognized for her leadership style and also for being very compassionate. New Zealand today consistently ranks high in women's political empowerment. Modern rights and gender equality laws. The Equal Pay Act in New Zealand was proposed in 1972. It was meant to close the gender wage gap. The Human Rights Act of 1993 protected women from discrimination in work, housing, education, and public services. New Zealand law supports maternity leave, parental leave, workplace safety, and equal employment opportunities. Women in New Zealand have a strong presence in government, business, higher education, and media. Women's rights in New Zealand today. New Zealand is considered one of the most gender equal countries in the entire world. Women are heavily included in politics, universities, and the workforce. The gender gap does still exist, but it is very small in comparison to many other countries in the world. For every dollar a man makes, a woman in New Zealand earns 94.8 cents. To compare this for everyone, I also added the ranking in the United States. So in the United States, for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 81 cents. Conclusion. Overall, New Zealand's inclusion of women is very impressive and should be something that other countries take note of. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope that everyone here learned a little bit more about New Zealand's women's rights, and I hope that other countries will take note of this as well, as it is a very important stepping stone for New Zealand. Thank you.